There are a number of mysterious books, otherwise unknown to us, mentioned in either the Gospel of Barnabas or the preface attached to the Spanish text of the Gospel of Barnabas. There is a small library of heretical books listed. Let us go through them and regard them all as part of the same incident. First, the mother text of the collection, the Gospel of Barnabas itself. According to the Spanish preface, the Gospel of Barnabas was found by Fra Marino in the library of Pope Sixtus V. We are also told that it was translated from Italian into Spanish by the Muslim Mustafa de Aranda. The extant text is a rambling diatessaron with a Muslim agenda, but it is clearly a patchwork compiled from various earlier sources with a strongly Jewish-Christian flavour. Most notable are a set of discourses located beyond the Jordan that may represent material originally ascribed to John the Baptist. Next, 4 glosses on the Scriptures. In the Spanish preface, Fra Marino reports 4 glosses on the Scriptures coming into his possession. Of these, we are told, they were glosses on the prophets Isaiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, and Joel. They were handed to Marino while working for the Inquisition by a gentleman of the Urbini family. They are written in Latin. The Urbini gentleman described them as of the old prophets but repugnant to the Christian law and deemed them heretical. The Urbini gentleman had found them in his library among the books of his forefathers. Fra Marino at first mistook them for Bibles before having a closer look. We are told of their contents that they are very different to those of our day, and that they were penned by prophets, so presumably glosses on the prophets written by prophets. This seems to be a reference to a literature of inspired interpretations of canonical texts. The prophets who penned the glosses are possibly of the same sons of the prophets tradition so prominent in the text of the Gospel of Barnabas. Next, 3 books of the Church Fathers. In the preface, we are told of 3 volumes of the Church Fathers. Of these, it is said, Fra Marino received them about a year after receiving the 4 glosses on the prophets. They came from a lady of the Colonna family. Her husband had died, leaving her with 2 sons, and on taking an inventory of her husband's goods, she found the 3 volumes in a chest belonging to him. Lady Colonna could not read them, but one of her sons could. He described them as exclaiming against Paul. She put them in a linen bag and took them to Marino, fearing that her husband would be dug up and burned as a heretic. They consisted of a treatise on the Virgin written by Ignatius, a work by Zosimus, disciple of the Apostles, and a third by Irenaeus, disciple of Ignatius. The volume by Irenaeus was anti-Pauline, and Irenaeus quoted as his authority the Gospel of Barnabas. Internally to the Gospel of Barnabas, there is the book of Daniel. There are several important references in Barnabas to a book of Daniel that in no way corresponds to the canonical book of Daniel. Of this we are told that Daniel writes the history of the kings of Israel and their tyrants. Moreover, Daniel writes the story of Haggai and Obadiah. There are 2 major installments of Daniel. After both, we get Barnabas's quarrel with orthodox texts. Thus, after the first installment, we get the words of Amos interpreted episode in chapter 161. After the second, we get Jesus' condemnation of the false Pharisees and doctors who have corrupted every prophecy, chapter 189. Importantly, Jesus testifies to the truth of the contents of the book of Daniel by making the sun stand still in chapter 189. The purpose of the miracle is that everyone may know that this be the truth. So there is a description of a wildly errant book of Daniel, and the implied claim that the author knows such a book of Daniel and is consulting it. Then there is the little book of Elijah. In chapter 145, Jesus, arguing with the Pharisees, mentions a little book of Elijah. He then quotes the book in full. Of this book we are told, Elijah wrote it at the prayer of his disciple Elisha. It contained all human wisdom and the law of our Lord God. Hearing of the book completely confounds the Pharisees because, through their tradition, they knew that no one observed such doctrine. The book itself is primitive Carmelite material. There is a conspicuous amount of Carmelite-themed material in the Gospel of Barnabas, and this appears to be a type of monastic rule that Jesus quotes in full. Then there is the old book of Moses and Joshua. The old book of Moses and Joshua is described by the good scribe Nicodemus in chapter 191. Of this book we are told that it is written that the Messiah shall come through Ishmael's line, and the messenger of the Messiah through Isaac's line. The book also does not contain the doctrine that God eats the flesh of cattle or sheep. It does not contain the doctrine that God has locked up his mercy in Israel alone, but rather that God has mercy on every man that seeks God, his Creator, in truth. Noting that the scribe is interested in what the book does not say, more than what it does. The scribe found the book in the library of the high priest, echoing the story that we have in the preface of the Spanish text. The scribe was not able to read all of the book because the high priest forbade him from doing so, because an Ishmaelite had written it. There is the suggestion advanced by some scholars that what is being described here is the Samaritan Bible. The only one of these books we have is the Gospel of Barnabas, although the little book of Elijah is embedded in it. Otherwise, glosses on the prophets Isaiah, Ezekiel, Daniel and Joel? No. A treatise on the Virgin written by Ignatius, a work by Zosimus and a work by Irenaeus? No. A version of Irenaeus that is anti-Pauline and that quotes a Gospel of Barnabas? No. An errant version of Daniel? No. The old book of Moses and Joshua? No. On the face of it, there is a good case for supposing that some or all of these texts did once exist, and they are not merely narrative devices. The author has access to errant texts. Moreover, the Spanish preface is intended to be credibly incriminating. It is quite possible that the Colonna were known to be harbouring these heretical texts by Ignatius, Zosimus, Irenaeus, glosses on the prophets. But if so, their whereabouts or subsequent fate are unknown. All the same, the Gospel of Barnabas seems to have travelled with other texts and is part of a collection of heterodox texts that at some point came into Italy.